Hi everybody, this is Monica from your jewelry class at Michael's last night. Thank you so much for stopping in, and I hope, even though it was crazy as all get out, that you had a great time and enjoyed all the sparkles that we had to offer. I'm sorry again for the supply issue. I have now spoken to management and they're going to try to get that sorted out. Apparently a lot of things are dictated from the corporate, so they don't have a whole lot of control over some things, but they are going to work on that. And because all of the October classes are now scheduled in advance, because I've already given them an entire calendar full of lovely beading classes, they are going to work on that to be sure that they get the supplies for the project list. So be sure, if you're interested in taking any more of my classes, that you sign up. Numero uno, sign up. You can either do that online or in any Michaels store. Just let them know which store that you're attending the class for. And then you'll be able to get a syllabus. Now you definitely need that class syllabus because it will tell you the products that you need to buy. It'll have that little list. You also get a 10% discount. Usually, I believe, on each syllabus at the bottom of your syllabus, that'll be that coupon. And it's a one-time only coupon for that discount. So if you have any kind of questions, just feel free to email or call me, and I am going to get started on a little video for the last little bracelet that we didn't get to finish, or several of us didn't get to finish it, in order to help you out, because I felt so horrible that some of you had to leave and you hadn't finished that final slider bracelet. So grab you something to drink, get your beading tools, get that stretchy cord if you kept it, or if you have now got an alternative stretchy cord, and let's get started. I know you all thought I was joking last night when I said I needed a Diet Coke, but clearly I was not. And then I also had to get myself some chocolate. Hopefully we won't have any other situation crop up like that, especially now that they're going to have regular jewelry classes. I've already got the month's worth of jewelry classes booked up. So hang in there with me, ladies. Let's get started trying to finish our slider bracelet. So we'll get this all situated for you. That way you'll be able to complete your bracelet that was the 2 layers of chain and your sliders. And then I just wanted to show you, I had made, and I forgot to show you last night, with wire on the sliders, because it's easier to feed through those holes. But if you can see that, I used a split ring, which is a double loop, instead of a regular jump ring, which actually is just one, sort of like this chain, it's just one link. It's more secure that way. And then I also used the 7-gauge beading wire, which was sort of like the wire that I showed you last night when we were talking about crimping. And then these little tiny silver things are called crimp covers, and what's underneath them are the crimp beads. That's where you'd use that funky looking plier that I was showing you that had the little dips in it. Those 2 different channels, you'd squish down your crimp bead or your crimp tube, depending on which way you decide that you prefer as you get more experienced in beading. To make it look more finished, you'll want to put your crimp cover over it and close it. That way it just kind of looks like a little silver bead. That is the wired version, only a single chain though. So the one that we're doing here with the stretchy cord's got 2 chains, but it's no big deal to add the additional chain because I use such a large split ring here, which is that round contraption that the chain is attached to. So you just add another piece of chain to that. But it's more secure, and it has a clasp, which is this lobster style clasp here. Most of your bracelets and necklaces utilize these lobster clasps, and they are fairly easy to use unless you have problems with using your fingers to open small little clasps. That's why I like those toggle clasps for a bracelet, which is like what we showed on Anna's bracelet. This is just my example to kind of help you out, those that might be interested in learning how to do the crimping. This is the wired version, running through those sliders, utilizing the clasps and the crimp beads and crimp covers and such. You had 2 sections of chain that you had removed, and again you can see how to do those rings here, your chain links. As long as the jump ring or chain link that you're using has a little split See this little tiny slit right here at the top of my chain link? That is what you want to look for when you're dealing with chain. Some chain will not have a break in the chain. It'll just be a solid link, and that's where you'll be using your cutters in order to cut the chain apart to the length that you need. However, this brand, and I think the other brands that the other two ladies were using, they all had a little split up at the top. So I use my flat nose pliers on the left, my bent nose pliers on the right, and because this is such a thick chain, it is a little bit cumbersome, so you've really got to give it some strength, or at least I did. And you want to go from yourself forward, or you can go back towards yourself in order to open it. Just don't go side to side. That's where you lose the strength of your ring. So again, I'm just going to take my pliers, and my right plier, the bent nose plier over here, is where I'm going to move mine forward. You want to twist it away from yourself. Okay, so now you've got it open. So that's just a reminder on how to open those chain links that have the slits on one end of them. And then to close it, of course, you just want to be sure that you're lining it back up the way that it was before you opened it. So you're just going to get back a hold of it, and since I did it away from myself, I want to now pull it towards myself on the right hand side. It's a little bit closer than what it was, and then if you need extra help, you can take your other plier to close down till you hear a pop. And mine still needs to go just a little bit more. You want to try to get it matched up just like it was before. That way it's a closed loop now, and your string won't go through that gap. My little gap at the top is now closed, and I'm ready then to use the chain to finish the bracelet. So we wanted, per the instructions, it said 5.5 inches of chain twice, but I did mine at 6 inches because I wanted to just have a little bit extra leeway. If you can see my measurement there, that way with having the extra room for me, I have a little bit more flexibility when I go to put it over my wrist, because you want to be able to get that bracelet over the biggest part of your hand. So you're not really gauging just your wrist size. You're also keeping in mind, especially for these stretchy bracelets, that it's got to come over the biggest part of your hand right here on the ball of your hand. Now the lovely and dreaded stretch cord that we had so many problems with last night. This is the 0.5 millimeter, and mine is Stretch Magic, but I've had mine for so long that it's actually a blue package. I think yours was a yellow package, if I'm remembering correctly. But this Stretch Magic I got in Yuma, Arizona when I very first started getting into beading. So I've had this a while, and you can see that it's not quite yellowed the way the roll was in the classroom. As you have this stretchy cord, initially it starts out kind of oily like your alls from last night was, although it still should have held its knot. Anytime that you use that stretchy cord, like I was talking about how you also want to put your dab of glue onto your knots, it's still supposed to hold a knot. I mean, you're not going to obviously be able to rip everything apart, but it still should hold its knot. So what was happening last night, I still don't have an answer for. Even if you had put a dab of glue on your knots, the way that some of those are just sliding apart in your hands after the knot was applied, that glue would not have helped. So a couple of you tried the alternate knot, and one of them on the thicker stretchy cord, the 1 millimeter stretchy cord, which is this. See how thick that stretchy cord is compared to what we were using. See, the 1 millimeter up here at top is a lot thicker than the 0.5 millimeter below. And anyway, she was using that 1 millimeter. She said she did had a problem with it just like you all were, where it was really slippery. But when she did that secondary knot, which was the overhand pull through, that hers stayed tied, whereas I believe it was Elizabeth was trying the overhand knot with this teeny tiny 0.5 millimeter like you guys had, and it just wouldn't hold it. We were doing that Shambhala bracelet especially. So the alternate knot that I'm talking about is where you doubled over your cord. Take it in your hand around your first two fingers and then pull that through like that, if you can see that. Okay, and then in that case, then of course you want to go back through with a second loop. Go do your second loop like we were doing before, but keeping in mind this is your doubled over loop, and then when you pull it closed, you have a knot the alternate way. The problem with that overhand pull through knot that was different than the one I was showing you guys is that knot is not necessarily 100% secure even if you double it over to pull it through. And the reason is because you've actually gone around two fingers and pulled it through the center, which means that the weight of your bracelet would be able to pull that knot apart. So that is an alternative method that you can use. If it works for you, just be sure that you take a dab of glue and put it on a toothpick. Usually what I do, I have a little scratch piece of cardboard right here. I'll open my glue up and get just a very tiny little blob on just a scratch piece of paper or a piece of cardboard. Take the toothpick with the glue and stick it on the center of my knot and let it dry. You want to be sure again that you're also trying to hide that knot into one or the other, either in the Shambhala tube, you're hiding it here in the corner just like I was telling you ladies last night. In the case of your other bracelet, these beads are so small they don't really have an opening big enough for you to pull your knot through, so you might do it on the corner. So just kind of play around with this stretchy cord. Okay, so the instructions on the stretchy cord part of this only called for 8 inches, but because a lot of us were struggling with not having enough of a tail left over to be able to make our knots properly, on this example I'm going to go ahead and cut off 12 inches. You'll have a little bit of waste doing it this way, but it's almost better to have maybe an inch or two of waste if it's easier for you to tie your knot, because if you can't grip in order to tie your knots and pull properly, then you're not going to be able to finish your bracelet because it'll just become too much of a nightmare. So we're taking 2 ends of our chain side by side, both lengths, and you're going to run your stretch cord through both of those lengths. You've threaded your cord through both pieces of chain here. Then you're going to bring your cord up to where both pieces are even. Okay, so your chain is hanging on the cord. So what I did, even though the instructions didn't call for it, because these chains are so heavy and our 5mm stretch cord is so small, I wanted to tie a knot. Now for this particular one, you can do it either or. You can either do the around your two fingers and then pull it through method, because it's going to butt right up against these two chains, or you can do the other knot that I was showing you. And let me just go ahead and do that knot, because this is actually the way that beaders typically do their knots. Of course, if you have problems with a slippery stretchy cord the way we did last night, whatever knot you can get to work, that's good to go. As long as your beading knot does not wiggle loose, you're okay. So there's my little knot. That's one. Now I'm pulling it very tightly against the chain, and I'm going to do one more for good measure, just to be on the safe side. Now I took the slack out by pulling my cord, but you don't want to jerk it, just like I was saying last night, because the goal is you're wanting to try to get your knot as close up to the chain as possible without having to put stress on your elastic. So now you've got these two pieces coming out from your chain this way, and what you're going to be doing now is taking your spacers, which I have mine on my little handy dandy tin lid, and you're going to take one cord at a time. Now these particular spacers, because the holes are so small on the spacers, I really struggled trying to get this stretchy cord, because it's so flimsy, through the holes. Whereas if I used my beading wire like how I did on this bracelet here, the wire is more straight and doesn't tend to be flimsy, so it just went straight through, whereas the stretchy cord sometimes was really challenging. But all you're going to do is just feed it through the hole. Now here is another tip. If you're going to use this teeny tiny stretch cord, might help you if you do it backwards so you can see the hole a little bit better. But you can get what is known as a beading needle, which is a little bit different from your sewing needles. Depending on the type of beading needle you get, they make a needle that is well, different lengths, but you can get them as long as probably 3 inches, and the entire needle, actually it has two sides to this needle. It's a very thin needle, but it opens from top to bottom, so that all you've got to do is slide your cord, or your thread or your stretchy cord into the hole. You're not having to search for a little teeny tiny eye of the needle, and then you can take that entire needle and push it through the hole, and it just pulls whatever material that you're trying to get through the hole through. So that might be something if you're like me and you struggle trying to get this stuff through these crazy holes. You'll see that was coming out the wrong end. There it goes. Yay! Now before you lose it, it's good to just go ahead and pull it on through. Now that's the top thread. Now guess what? You get to have that level of fun with the bottom thread. Woo, yeah. So we're going to do this again. And see, look, it just went right through the first time. You'll find in beading that your level of frustration increases the more tired you become, or the more cumbersome that things can be. So if you get frustrated with something, just take a step back, go get some Diet Coke, eat a piece of chocolate, and then come back to it, because sometimes no matter how many times you sit there trying to feed a string through a little hole, it may not cooperate with you. You'll see you have just a little bit of a gap when you pull tight of the stretch cord, and that's going to be okay. I mean, it's unavoidable because you're tying knots to chain. So you're just going to continue to feed these sliders through, one string in one hole and one string on the other hole, until you get 5 of these sliders onto your string. Okay, just again wanting to show you how we've got those strings are coming out of this back of this slider. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm just so excited. You'll find these small victories in beading are worth a chuckle or two. And look at that. like butter. Here's the last slider. Now some of you may get to enjoying working with stretchy cord. Like I said last night, I'm not really into the stretch cord unless I'm making some kids bracelets, or I just need something really fast and feel like I don't want to mess with my wire and stuff. Which I'm going to tell you, once you get into using beading wire and crimping and everything, you're going to prefer that completely. That's the last slider. Yay! Look at that. Yay! We got them all. Now you're going to be tying the other sides of the chain to the sliders here. So what I'm going to do is take, and again, depending on how comfortable you are with the knots that you're using, I'm going to take both my pieces of chain that I have lined up. You'll want to be sure too, whenever you're dealing with these chains or jump rings that have the opening, that you want to try to close as best as you can the link. That way your cord does not slip through. And if it does, if the cord didn't break, it just slipped through, then all you've got to do is remember you need to have your tools and come back in and readjust your chain link. And then sometimes you'll find that some of the links in the chain that you're using may be misshapen, or maybe when you opened it from side to side a little bit, or didn't get it exactly straight. So you can just adjust that, or just remove it, take it off, whatever's easiest for you. But the biggest thing is you want to be sure you're not leaving a gap so that the stretchy cord wants to come out. Taking my both sets of pliers so that I can close that little bitty gap, and within reason now my little link here is closed and as much as even as I could get it, because these really thick chain links are hard to open and close. So if you're gonna mess with chain, unless you like this chunky chain, I prefer using the more petite chain. Some of you had some really nice chain last night as an alternative to this crazy stuff, but a lot of the young kids, they like this chunky chain. You just have to be strong early. Maybe I'm just weak because I do have carpal tunnel. Just trying to get that as straight as you can. I mean, some of them's not going to be perfect, but you want to try to get it as close to perfect as you can. That way you don't have your cording coming through. See? You want your sliders going all the way to the chain where you tied it to. And you'll still see a little bit of it, but I mean, it's not anything that's really going to be too bad noticeable. Now I like to have all of my sliders touching in this design. The instructions have that as well. If you prefer to put some stuff in between your sliders, like have maybe some seed beads, which are little things, you know, the candy corn earrings that I was showing you. A lot of times when you buy beads, they already come with these 6/0 seed beads, these little tiny clear ones. Sometimes they'll be black. It just depends on what color scheme of beads you're buying. But these little baby beads right here are seed beads, and this particular size is a 6/0. You can actually put maybe 1 or 2 in between each of these sliders if you like that look, because sometimes it's pretty to have those little seed beads like that through there. And then sometimes I just like to have the slider. It's just your personal preference, but the instructions have the sliders just touching. I'm going to take my 2 ends of chain and keeping them straight how I've got them lined up. I'm going to take my string and try to keep your string straight as well. 1 end of string, or stretch magic, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Just feeding that cord through the chain, bringing it up, and then I'm tying, whoops, the knots that I showed you guys last night, the overhand knot. So there was my one. Now I'm coming back through here with my two. Some people will even do a third. So here, I'm going to put a third in just for good measure, because this is a heavy chain and we've got two pieces of the heavy chain. So if you see how that knot kind of makes a little line, that gives you more strength as you're pulling. And also when you've got heavy pieces like this and you're trying to use such a small stretch cord, it gives you a little bit more strength. So now that was one knot, but always make another knot. If you don't learn anything from me at all, when dealing with stretch cord, you want to always make an extra knot. So great job, ladies, on your first official jewelry beading class where we did the stackable bracelets. This is the extra one where I use the beading wire and the crimps and everything, so as an alternative to the stretchy cord. Here, this is the one where I just showed you how to do it, and I've got the jewelry glue drying. There's your Shambhala tube or slash slider, whichever way you want to call it. And then this is your mix of beads and chain. So you can wear these any way that you want. The example has your chain bracelet first, which is this one here. That's what they've got here on the left. Then the middle bracelet is the slider. They have that one worn in the middle. And then your Shambhala tube bracelet, which is this here, they have on the right. So if you're looking at on your wrist, you'd be wearing it like this. These are 3 individual bracelets, so you can wear them separately. You don't have to wear them together. You can stack them. You can wear 2 at a time if you prefer. That's a part of the reason why, as far as my design, I wanted to switch up the beads. If I wore them together, see how that looks? It alternates my blues and my clears. That's just my own personal preference. Now if you did all clears and white, there's going to be a subtle difference. If you did some clears in silver, there's going to be a subtle difference in that. It's perfectly fine however you choose to wear these. There's no right or wrong to it. It's just whatever you like. So thanks again. Have fun.